Hello everyone, and welcome to another video in C++. Here we're going to talk about what it's like to create a program that can write to files. And one can think of files as a way of getting data. It can be thought of as a source of data. You as a user or a programmer may have already used sources of data such as generating your own, whether you create your own array or vector and you fill it with data, or you might get it from the user using the program, and this can be done with standard cin and that kind of thing. So here we'll talk about yet another way of getting data, and that's through using files. So first things first, when I like to use files, I like to use a string to represent the file name and the file data path. However, for this example, it'll be in the same folder, so I'll say string. So we'll include that, so that way we can have the name of the file that we want to write to. And so that way we can work with files. I'm going to say fstream. Right, so file stream. We can think of iostream as input-output stream, and fstream as file stream. So how do we begin? Well, first I'd like to start off with the file name. So this will be string, and I'll say file name is equal to what? And for this program, we'll just say we're going to call the name of our file cppdata.txt. So why am I choosing the .txt extension? It's preference. I myself as a programmer have worked with txt files and csv files. Right, so here we have declared a file name. So what comes next? Well, we need to create our file object. So since we're going to be writing to this file, I'm going to call this output file stream. Right, this is what it stands for, output file stream. I'm going to call the class write file. Okay, so here I have the file name, which is a string which shows the path to the file that we're going to write to. The name of the file that we're going to write to, cpp_data.txt, and on line 7 we created our writing file object. So what comes next? Well, for this example, I want to have the int I as a small iterator, and well, the first thing to do is, when wanting to write to files, is to open up the file. We want to open up the file, and so that way we can write to it. So we do that with the open method, and Visual Studio is providing us a nice way of implementing calling this method. So we can provide a file name and a mode. So here for the file name, I'm going to provide file_name. And for the mode, this kind of shows the read and write mode. So by default, it has some default values, and you can find that on the documentation for the ofstream data type class. But for me, I like to dictate the kind of file operation that I like to do, and because here I want to write, I'm just going to use standard input output stream out. Right, so this is the standard namespace, the input output stream namespace, and here we use out. Alright, so this method, what we're doing on line 11 is that we're opening the file. And what's really nice about this method is that if cppdata.txt didn't exist, it'll create it here, and it's pretty nice. And the mode here just designates that we're going to write to the file. So why don't we continue? Well, actually, before I even get anywhere, I'd like to call the close function, so that way when we're all said and done, the file is opening and closing appropriately. Good practice. So what do we want to do after we open the file? Well, first I'm going to write an if statement, and I'm going to check if write file is open. Right, this is done because I don't want to have any error in, I want to say is open. So here I call the method to check if the file is open, right? And in the body of the code here, I want to do something in the case that the file is open. That being, well, writing something to it. So in order for me to start writing to the file, I'm going to say write file. I'm going to have my two double angle brackets, and this is nice because the overloaded operator lets us write to the file. So here I'll say this is a string written to the file, and we'll provide a new line. Right, so here on line 14, I've written to the file, and this is the string that's going to be written to that file. Right, so this is one way of doing it. You can do it this way by putting a line and doing this yourself. You can also use loops. I can say I equals 1 and create a while loop that will put values into the write values into the file. And I'll use a combination of a string and a number. So we'll use write file, continue to use the overloaded double angle bracket operator, and I'll say, I don't know, this is statement, and I'll give it a space, and I'll say I, and I'll throw in a new line right after. Right, so what's nice here is that I'm not only just writing a string to the file like I did here, I'm writing a combination of different data types. I'm writing a string, then an integer, then another string. Now this is pretty nice because this overloaded operator handles all of this data. It can handle writing a string to the file that we just opened, writing a number to the file without a problem. Right? Next, if I'd like to, I can have a for loop that says, you know what, we were going to start at I, we're going to write 1,000 values, 1,000 numbers to this file. So I'll have write file, and I will throw in I there. So here you'll notice I keep throwing in the new line, and that's so that I can keep writing to the new line, right? You want things to be separated by a new line when you're writing to a text file. I don't want everything to be in one line. With C and C++, when you're writing to files, it's very, very, very specific, and if you want things on its own line, you need to specify that with adding a new line every time you write to the file. Because if you don't, everything will be added on to each other right next to each other without any separating characters or new lines, right? So if we neglected this new line character, everything would be on one line for the file, and that's not what we want. We want stuff on many lines and that kind of thing. So that's why we're including the new line at the end of each file writing operation. Right, so here, we have 3 examples of writing to a file. Here we're going to write, this is a string written to the file, and it's going to be written to cpp data.txt. Here we enter a while loop where we write to the file. This is a statement, and then we give it a number and a new line. And then we use a for loop just to throw in 1,000 numbers there. Right, so here in this operation, we are writing the file and adding data to it, that kind of thing. So while this is the case in opening the file, this is the case if the file is open, let's write an else statement to check what happens if, well, we can't write the file. So in this case, I'm just going to print a message to the user and say, I don't know, file name. That's the wrong angle brackets. We'll put a space there, and I'll say, hey, cannot be opened. Right, and that'll be it. So if we're able to open the file, we'll do all these file writing operations. Otherwise, we'll say that, it can't be opened. Right, so what happens when we build and run? I forgot to iterate my while loop. I forgot to put my changing variable into the while loop, so I probably wrote a whole bunch of stuff. With that error out of the way, now we can write appropriately all the data that's in the body of the code to the file. So if we run this, we'll see that it should end, and here's the visual console. So it will end, and we're done. So what happens if we go and we check the data.txt? Right, let's see what happens when, well, after the fact that we've written to this text file. So here you can see the window where we have data.txt. We'll open it, and look at that. We have the string that was written to the file. Here we have, this is statement 1, this is statement 2, and so on. And if we keep going, and we scroll all the way down, we have 1000 values. In the next video, we'll cover how to read from a file. We'll be reading from a text file.